AITA for calling off my wedding after my fiancé confessed to cheating with my best friend. I, 28M, was engaged to the love of my life, Emily, 27F. We met in college and have been together for 5 years. I always considered her my best friend, the person I trusted most in the world. Our relationship was far from perfect, but we made it work. Sure, we had our share of arguments and challenges, but overall, I thought we had something solid. Last month, Emily and I had a big argument about something relatively minor. I don't even remember exactly what it was about, but I know that we both said things we regretted. It got pretty ugly, and we ended up taking some space from each other to cool down. This wasn't the first time we had an argument like this, so I didn't think too much of it first. However, a few days after the fight, Emily came to me, clearly upset, and asked if we could talk. We sat down, and she started off by apologizing for her part in the argument. I thought that was mature of her, and I felt hopeful that we could move forward. But then, the conversation took a turn that I never expected. Emily told me that she had something to confess, and it was the hardest thing she'd ever had to do. I immediately felt a pit in my stomach because I could tell that whatever she was about to say was serious. She told me that during the time we had been fighting, she had cheated on me. And not just with some random guy. She confessed to having an affair with my best friend, David, 28M, for the past 6 months. At first, I just sat there in shock. I couldn't even process what she was saying. I asked her to repeat it because I honestly thought I had misheard her. But no, she confirmed it. Emily had been sleeping with David behind my back, and she said it started as a friendship that slowly turned into something more. She claimed she had been feeling neglected in our relationship, and that David had been there for her in a way I hadn't been. I was completely blindsided. When she told me about the affair, she seemed genuinely remorseful, crying and apologizing profusely. But at that moment, I couldn't even feel any sympathy for her. All I could feel was betrayal, an overwhelming, suffocating betrayal. I felt like I was going to vomit. I didn't know what to say. I was shaking, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them good. Emily begged me to let her explain herself further, but I couldn't even look at her. I told her that I needed space and that we would talk later. I walked out of the apartment, barely able to hold it together. I needed time to process what had just happened. I stayed at a friend's place for a few days while I tried to sort through my feelings. I knew Emily was devastated, but honestly, I didn't care. The only thing I could think about was the fact that the two people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst possible way. How could they do this to me? How could they both keep such a huge secret for so long? I was also mad at myself for not noticing the signs. In hindsight, there were little things that seemed off. Emily had been more distant in the weeks leading up to our fight, and David had been acting strangely when I saw him. But I didn't want to admit to myself that something might be wrong in my relationship. Now, I felt like an idiot for not seeing what was right in front of me. After a few days of thinking it over, I knew what I had to do. I called Emily and told her that I was calling off the wedding. There was no way I could marry someone who had done something like this to me, and I couldn't be with someone I no longer trusted. She tried to convince me to reconsider, promising that it was a mistake and that she was truly sorry, but I just couldn't. The hardest part of all of this was that Emily and I had been planning this wedding for months. We had already sent out invitations, booked the venue, and paid for the photographer. It was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Now, I was standing at the crossroads of my life, trying to figure out how to navigate the aftermath of what had just happened. I thought about confronting David, but I honestly wasn't sure what I would even say. What was there to say? I had trusted him like a brother, and he had completely betrayed me. Part of me wanted to beat him up, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I just cut him out of my life completely. Word about the breakup got out pretty quickly. Some of my friends were supportive, but others were less understanding. A few people even told me that I was overreacting, that I should try to work things out with Emily because she made a mistake. They said that cheating happens, and sometimes couples can recover from it. But there was no coming back from this for me. If someone cheats once, there's no guarantee they won't do it again. And the fact that it was with my best friend, that made it even worse. Some people have even told me that I shouldn't have called off the wedding so quickly. They think I should have tried to work through it and see if we could rebuild our relationship. But I'm not sure I could ever trust her again, and even if I could, it would never be the same. How could I ever look at her the same way after everything that happened? Now I'm left dealing with the fallout. I have to cancel everything, reschedule the venue, deal with family members asking me questions I don't want to answer, and cope with the emotional wreckage of losing not only my fiancé, but also my best friend. I'm devastated, but I can't help but feel that I made the right choice. So, AITA for calling off my wedding after I found out that my fiancé cheated on me with my best friend? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her boyfriend to my wedding after he disrespected my fiancé. I'm 29F, getting married in a couple of months to my fiancé, Jack, 32M. We've been together for 5 years, and it's honestly been a dream relationship. We've had our ups and downs like anyone, but we communicate well, and I feel like we've built something solid. Our wedding is supposed to be a big celebration for our families, but there's been a huge issue with my sister, Jenna, 27F, and her boyfriend, Kyle, 30M. Jenna and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up in the same household, but we've always had different personalities. She's very outgoing, often the life of the party, but also has a tendency to be a little over the top. I've always been more reserved, and while I enjoy a good time, I prefer keeping things a little more low-key and controlled. That's never been an issue until recently. So, Jenna started dating Kyle about a year ago, and I honestly didn't think much of him at first. He seemed nice enough, charming, a little too talkative at times, but harmless. However, things started going downhill when he started making comments about Jack. At first, there were small things like commenting on Jack's style or saying that Jack seemed a bit boring or stiff. I didn't think much of it, since it wasn't anything too extreme, and I figured it was just a joke. But then it started to escalate. At a family barbecue a few months ago, Kyle outright made fun of Jack's job in front of everyone. Jack works as a software engineer, and Kyle, who works in sales, said something like, "Wow, a job where you just sit around coding all day? That sounds so boring. Are you sure you're not just pretending to work?" Jack tried to laugh it off, but it clearly stung. I could see how uncomfortable he was, and I knew it wasn't the first time Kyle had made him feel that way. I brushed it off, but I could tell that Jack wasn't a fan of Kyle, and I was starting to feel the same way. It didn't stop there, though. At another family gathering, Kyle was talking about a trip he took, and when Jack mentioned he hadn't been on a vacation in a while, Kyle mockingly said, "Must be tough for you, huh?" Sitting at a desk, while people like me actually go out and live life. I could feel the tension rising. Jack was biting his lip, trying to stay composed, but I could tell he was getting fed up. At this point, I knew something needed to be said. So, I pulled Jenna aside and asked her to talk to Kyle about his behavior. I didn't want to cause drama, but I felt like it was getting out of hand. She was upset when I brought it up and accused me of being too sensitive. She told me that Kyle was just teasing and that I shouldn't take it so personally. I told her that it wasn't just me. Jack was feeling uncomfortable too, and it wasn't just a few jokes. She dismissed me, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing, and that I should stop trying to control who she dates. I was hurt, but I tried to let it go. Flash forward to a few weeks ago when I was discussing wedding plans with my family. I mentioned that I'd sent out the invites and was finalizing everything. That's when Jenna dropped the bombshell. She wanted to bring Kyle to the wedding. At first, I was just a bit surprised because I hadn't even thought about him coming, but then I remembered the tension between him and Jack and how much he disrespected my fiancé. I told Jenna that I wasn't comfortable with Kyle attending the wedding, and she immediately got defensive. She said that I was being unreasonable and that it was her right to bring her boyfriend of a year to the most important day of her life. I told her that while I understood that, it was also my wedding, and I didn't feel like I could allow someone who had disrespected my fiancé multiple times to be there. Jenna became furious. She accused me of choosing Jack over family and said that I was making her feel like she wasn't important. She told me that if Kyle wasn't invited, she wouldn't come either. I was torn. I love my sister, and I want her to be there, but I can't stand the idea of letting Kyle attend after everything that's happened. Jack has made it clear that he doesn't want Kyle there either, and he's told me that if I let him come, he might not even feel comfortable attending. I don't want to start my marriage on bad terms, but I also don't want to lose my sister. I tried to explain this to Jenna, but she wasn't hearing it. She said I was being dramatic and making a mountain out of a molehill. I even tried to suggest a compromise, like having Kyle attend the wedding but sit at a separate table away from Jack or limiting their interactions, but she wasn't having it. She told me I was being controlling and that if I wanted a perfect wedding, I should just let her bring whoever she wants. That's when I snapped. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wishes, then she didn't need to come to the wedding at all. She hung up on me after that, and I haven't heard from her since. Now, my parents are calling me, telling me that I'm being too harsh and that I should just let it go for the sake of family. They say I'm being petty and should just ignore the comment Kyle made. My friends are split. Some think I'm right to stand up for Jack and my wedding day, while others think I'm being too rigid and should just let it go. My fiancé is supportive of whatever I decide, but he's also said he's not comfortable with Kyle being there. I've been feeling terrible about the whole situation. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to sacrifice my relationship with Jack for the sake of avoiding conflict. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring Kyle to the wedding. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she disinvited me and my family. So, here's the situation. I, 29F, have a sister, Jenna, 26F, who is getting married in a few months. She's always been the golden child in our family. Beautiful, smart, and everything seems to just fall into place for her. I'm the older sister, and while I wouldn't call myself the black sheep, I've definitely never been the one who gets all the attention or praise. But that's fine. I've always been the type to keep my head down and focus on my career and personal life. A few weeks ago, Jenna started planning her wedding, and she came to me for advice. She's always turned to me for help with stuff like this, so I didn't think much of it. I helped her pick out a venue, gave her some ideas for decorations, and even offered to help with the budget since I've been doing well at my job lately. Everything seemed normal until one day, Jenna called me and told me that her fiancé's parents had offered to pay for the entire wedding. This was huge because Jenna had been stressing about how she was going to afford all the extravagant things she wanted. The catch, though, was that they had very specific preferences about the guest list. Mainly, they didn't want any drama at the wedding, and they felt that some of the people on the guest list could cause issues. That's when Jenna told me that she was going to have to cut down on the number of people she invited. At first, I thought this was just a typical wedding stress moment, and that she was just figuring things out. But then she told me that I wasn't going to be invited. Not just me, but also my husband, 31M, and our 2 kids, ages 5 and 7. She explained that her fiancé's family didn't want kids running around and certain people there, and I was one of the people they felt could cause tension. I was shocked and honestly a little hurt. I've always supported Jenna, been there for her, and now I was just being cut out for no real reason. She said it wasn't personal, but that she didn't want to rock the boat. I asked her if we could at least come to the ceremony, and she said that wouldn't be possible either because her fiancé's parents didn't want anyone showing up who wasn't invited to the reception. So I was basically being excluded from the entire day. I tried to reason with her, reminding her of how much I'd done to help with the wedding planning, but she kept repeating that it wasn't her decision and that I shouldn't take it personally. I was angry, but I tried to keep my cool. I told her that it was extremely hurtful and that I wasn't sure how I could support her after that. I also mentioned that I felt like this was a huge slap in the face, considering how much I'd always done for her, and that if she was going to go along with this, I didn't think I could be a part of it. She didn't take it well. She told me I was being dramatic and that I needed to stop making everything about me. That was the last straw for me. Fast forward a few weeks, and I got a message from Jenna asking if I was going to attend the wedding. I told her, "No, I'm not coming because you didn't invite me and my family." She seemed shocked, and I guess she assumed I'd get over it. Then, to add insult to injury, she asked me if I would be willing to help cover some of the costs for the wedding. Specifically, she wanted me to pay for the catering for 50 people. I was stunned. I told her that, after everything, I wasn't going to fund something that I wasn't even invited to. I reminded her that I had already helped her with advice and ideas, and she still had the audacity to ask me to pay for the catering. She got angry and said I was being petty and vindictive, and that she thought family should help each other out. I want to make it clear that I'm not a rich person, but I've always done what I could to help my family, and I've certainly helped out at family events in the past. I also think it's beyond rude to exclude me from the wedding and then ask for money. But now, I'm feeling conflicted. My mom, 56F, and dad, 58M, are both really upset with me for not supporting Jenna and for making a big deal out of nothing. They said I should just suck it up, go to the wedding, and that it's just a wedding. I shouldn't make it about me. But my husband is on my side. He says that the way Jenna treated us is unacceptable, and that if she wants my help, she should have at least had the decency to invite us in the first place. He also thinks it's manipulative to ask for money after treating me like this. I guess my question is, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for her wedding and not attending? I know she's my sister, and I get that weddings are a big deal, but this just feels so disrespectful. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she uninvited me over a gift dispute. I, 29F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Emma, 26F. Growing up, we shared everything, clothes, secrets, even boyfriends, not at the same time, obviously. I was there for her when she went through some tough times, and I always tried to be supportive of her decisions, even when I didn't agree with them. So when she got engaged, I was ecstatic for her and offered to help with the wedding planning however I could. Now, Emma and her fiancé, Josh, have always been a little on the extravagant side. They both come from wealthy families, and their idea of a simple wedding would make most people's jaws drop. Still, I knew that their wedding was going to be a big deal, and I was happy to be involved. I also knew that wedding expenses are no joke, and I wanted to contribute in some way. Emma and Josh had set a very high bar when it came to their guest list. It wasn't just friends and family. Almost every person they knew or had met once through work or social events was invited. As you can imagine, the guest list alone was already pushing 400 people, and that didn't even include the plus ones. I don't come from a rich family, and while I do well enough in my career, I'm a senior marketing manager at a tech company. My finances are not on the same level as Emma's or Josh's. Still, I was happy to help in whatever way I could. My main concern was how expensive everything was going to be. When Emma told me about the bridal registry, I was shocked by the prices. There were gifts on there that cost thousands of dollars, including a luxury watch set, designer luggage, and some ridiculous art pieces that I'm sure she would never actually use. I don't have that kind of money to spend on a gift. I wasn't sure what to get her. I wanted to get something meaningful, something that would actually be useful, but I also knew she was expecting something pricey. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to give her a custom piece of jewelry. It was a beautiful necklace, something elegant, but not over the top. I had it made with her wedding date engraved on it, hoping it would be something she could keep and cherish for years to come. I thought it was thoughtful, sentimental, and not the least bit cheap. The necklace was about $500, which was a big stretch for me, but I thought it was worth it. About a week before the wedding, Emma called me and said she needed to talk. I could tell something was off, but I had no idea what was coming. When we got on the phone, she told me she'd been going through the wedding gifts, and while she appreciated my gesture, she felt the necklace wasn't enough for the occasion. She said it was too modest compared to the other gifts she'd received, and that it made her feel uncomfortable. She explained that she was expecting something closer to what her friends and family were giving, which meant a much larger gift, like a designer purse or a cash contribution of at least $1,000. I was honestly shocked. I'd never expected this conversation, and I didn't know how to react. I tried to explain that I'd put a lot of thought into the gift and that it was meaningful to me, but she just kept repeating that it wasn't enough and that it made her feel awkward. I told her that I didn't have the money to spend on extravagant gifts, and she said she understood, but it was a wedding, not a birthday. I wasn't sure what to say. I told her I'd thought we'd agreed that the gift was about the sentiment, not the price tag. But she wasn't hearing it. Eventually, Emma told me that she didn't want me to attend the wedding if I wasn't going to contribute more financially. She said she didn't want me to feel embarrassed or out of place, which was, in my opinion, just an excuse to make me feel guilty. I was hurt. I felt like she didn't care about the thought behind the gift or my feelings, only the price tag. I explained that this was her wedding, and I wanted to support her, but that I wasn't going to throw money around just to meet her expectations. She told me that if I wasn't willing to step it up, it might be better for everyone if I didn't attend. I was devastated. The wedding was just a few days away, and I had already made all the arrangements to be there. I'd booked a hotel, taken time off work, and I was looking forward to being a part of such an important day in her life. But I couldn't bring myself to just roll over and comply with her demand for a more expensive gift. I felt like my sister was more interested in the material aspects of the wedding than in having me there for support. In the end, I told Emma that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I explained that it was not about the money or the gift. It was about how she had made me feel. I told her that if she couldn't accept my gift as it was, then I didn't think I should be there. I told her I loved her, but I couldn't pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. She was furious and said some things about how I was being selfish and that I was ruining our relationship. Since then, we've barely spoken, and she's made it clear she doesn't want to have a relationship with someone who doesn't support her in the way she thinks she deserves. I feel really conflicted. On one hand, I understand that weddings are stressful and that she probably feels the pressure to have everything perfect. On the other hand, I don't think it's fair for her to hold the gift I gave her against me, especially when I had no intention of being anything but supportive. I'm heartbroken that things have come to this point, but at the same time, I feel like she was more concerned with appearances and money than with our relationship. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she uninvited me over a gift dispute. So, some context. I, 28M, am engaged to my fiancé, Sarah, 27F. We've been together for 3 years, and we're getting married next year. Everything's been great between us, but there's a big issue with my sister, Megan, 30F. Megan and I have always had a somewhat complicated relationship, but in the past few years, things have become a bit more strained, mostly because of her behavior towards Sarah. Megan and I grew up very close. She was always the overachiever, and I was the more laid-back, go-with-the-flow type. But we got along well until I started dating Sarah. At first, Megan acted super sweet and nice towards Sarah, but then little things started to happen. Snide remarks, backhanded compliments, and weird comments that made me uncomfortable. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just jealousy or whatever, but it kept happening. Sarah, being the kind person she is, never called Megan out on her behavior. She just let things slide, but I could tell it was starting to take a toll on her. One day, I overheard Megan telling a friend of hers that she didn't understand why Sarah was with someone like me. I was pretty pissed off about it, but I didn't confront Megan right away. Instead, I brought it up with Sarah. Sarah was hurt, but didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so we decided to just ignore it and move on. However, the comments continued, getting more frequent and more cutting. It was everything from making fun of Sarah's job to questioning her intelligence to outright suggesting that she wasn't good enough for me. Fast forward to Megan's engagement. She got engaged about a year ago to a guy I'll call Ethan, 32M. Ethan is a nice guy, nothing too special, but he treats Megan well, and I've never had an issue with him. But when Megan got engaged, she immediately started planning her wedding. We're a close-knit family, so I was excited for her, even though I knew the dynamics between Megan and Sarah were a little tense. Things took a weird turn about a month ago when Megan officially sent out invitations. She invited me and Sarah, which was expected, but in a separate conversation, she made it clear that Sarah's presence at the wedding wasn't exactly wanted. Megan asked me not to bring Sarah to the wedding, saying she wasn't comfortable with Sarah attending due to the tension between them. Megan's words were pretty harsh, and I was taken aback. I tried to reason with her, but she was firm. She said she was just being honest and that she didn't want the awkwardness affecting her day. I was furious. I told Megan that I was not going to come if Sarah wasn't invited, and I made it clear that I wouldn't choose her over my fiancé. Megan, of course, didn't take that well. She started telling me that I was overreacting and that she was just trying to avoid drama on her special day. She said, "It's not personal, it's just a wedding. It's about me and Ethan, not about you and Sarah." After that, the conversation ended with her telling me she didn't want me to attend at all if I was going to cause drama by choosing Sarah. I told her if she didn't want me at her wedding, that was fine, but I wasn't going to attend without Sarah. The whole thing has left me feeling betrayed. Megan and I were close for most of our lives, and now she's asking me to choose between her and my future wife. I told Sarah what happened, and she was really upset, but also told me that she didn't want me to make a big deal out of it. She suggested I just go to the wedding without her, but I couldn't do that. I didn't want to attend my sister's wedding knowing how much she disliked Sarah and me. So, I made the decision to not attend Megan's wedding. I haven't spoken to her much since then, and she's been sending me passive-aggressive messages calling me selfish and dramatic. A couple of family members have tried to get me to talk to her, but I haven't budged. My parents are upset with me for causing drama, and not just going without Sarah, but I feel like they're not understanding how serious this is. I've been struggling with this because on one hand, I understand that a wedding is a huge deal, and I don't want to be the reason my sister's day is ruined. On the other hand, I can't just ignore the way she's treated Sarah and me. I'm feeling torn between my family and my fiancé, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable here. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited my fiancé. AITA for not letting my sister-in-law move in after her divorce, even though she has nowhere else to go. I, 29M, have been married to my wife, Emily, 28F, for almost 5 years now. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall, we've got a pretty solid relationship. We're both hardworking, supportive of each other's goals, and we try to keep things balanced between our work lives, social lives, and home lives. Emily's family is really important to her. She's got 2 brothers, Tom, 33M, and Ben, 24M, and they're both good guys. They've always gotten along well with me, though I don't hang out with them a ton. Emily's the type of person who stays close with her family, especially when things get tough. That's important context because recently Emily's older sister, Sarah, 36F, went through a rough divorce. Sarah's been married for about 12 years to a guy named Mark, and I'll be honest, I never really liked him. He always seemed dismissive, arrogant, and a little condescending, but since he was Emily's brother-in-law, I kept my opinions to myself. To make a long story short, Sarah found out Mark was cheating on her. She packed up her things and left him, but now she's stuck with nowhere to live. And this is where things get tricky. Sarah came to Emily and asked if she could stay with us while she gets back on her feet. I'm sympathetic to her situation. Obviously, divorce is tough, especially when it's a long-term marriage. But my gut reaction was that I wasn't comfortable with her moving in. Emily and I have a 1-bedroom apartment, and while we've talked about upgrading to a bigger place eventually, that's not in the cards right now. It's not ideal for us to have a guest staying indefinitely, and I worried that it might disrupt the flow of our home. I wasn't totally against helping Sarah, though. I suggested she look into renting a place nearby, or even finding a temporary rental through Airbnb or something like that. I also offered to help her financially if she needed it for a deposit or moving costs. But Emily didn't take that well. She insisted that Sarah had nowhere else to go, and it was just temporary. She's in an emotional state, and it's really hard for her to be alone right now. Emily begged me to reconsider. I told her I just wasn't comfortable having her sister stay with us. I pointed out that we weren't set up for it, and it wouldn't be fair to both of us. She argued that I was being selfish and not supporting her family. She even said that if I loved her, I would do this for her. I felt guilty, but I still stood my ground. I said, if she stays here, it's not just a matter of having her crash on the couch. It's about our privacy, our space, and the stress it could put on our relationship. The tension between us escalated over the next few days. Emily's been upset, and I feel like there's been a little bit of a distance between us. She has kept talking to Sarah, and I know has been trying to find other ways to make it work, but Sarah keeps coming back to the idea of moving in with us. I've noticed that Emily's been spending more time with Sarah, trying to talk things through with her, but I feel like she's been less engaged with me during that time. Eventually, Sarah asked if she could come over for a serious talk, and I agreed. When she came, she was visibly upset, saying she didn't know where she was going to go and that I was being unreasonable. I told her I understood her frustration, but reiterated that our living situation just wasn't feasible. I told her I'd be happy to help in any other way possible, but living with us wasn't an option right now. It didn't go well. Sarah broke down crying, which made me feel like the worst person on the planet. Emily was in the other room, and I could hear her getting upset, too. In the end, Sarah left, and I'm sure she told Emily how I was being heartless. Now, Emily's really upset with me. She feels like I'm not prioritizing her family when I should be, and she said I could have handled it differently by at least offering her a more welcoming response. I feel like I was trying to be reasonable by suggesting other ways of helping, but now I'm starting to doubt myself. Maybe I should have just agreed, even if it wasn't the most comfortable situation for me. But the truth is, I'm not sure I could have lived with someone else in our small space for who knows how long. AITA for not letting Sarah move in with us? AITA for ruining my friend's wedding after I found out my ex was invited? Okay, so this is going to be a long one, but please bear with me. I, F28, have a friend, let's call her Jess, F28, who I've known for about 12 years. We were pretty close throughout high school and even college, but over the past couple of years, we've drifted apart. It's not that we had a falling out or anything dramatic. We just grew apart. Our lives took different directions, and while we still keep in touch, it's not like we talk every day anymore. So, Jess is getting married soon. I had heard from a mutual friend that she had sent out invitations, and that's when I found out my ex, Mike, M30, was going to be at the wedding. Mike and I had been together for about 5 years from the time I was 18 until I was 23. We had a pretty serious relationship, and I genuinely thought we were going to get married one day, but then he cheated on me. I found out through some pretty painful circumstances that he had been seeing someone else for about 6 months while we were still living together. The breakup was devastating. I won't go into all the details, but I had a very hard time coping with it. I had to move out of the apartment we shared, and we didn't speak for years. Over the years, I've moved on and started dating other people, but I never really had closure with Mike. He never really apologized for what he did, and I've tried my best to just block him out of my life. I've moved on, but the emotional scars still linger. So, imagine my surprise when I found out that Mike is going to be at Jess's wedding. I hadn't heard from him in years, and I honestly had no idea he even knew Jess well enough to be invited. I immediately texted her, asking if it was a mistake. She said no, and when I pressed her about it, she explained that Mike and her had stayed in touch throughout the years, and that he had reached out to her a couple of times during our breakup. Jess said she never heard the full story from me, but she felt bad about what happened and wanted to maintain a friendship with Mike. She assured me that they were both adults and that it wouldn't be awkward if I just avoided him at the wedding. I don't know why, but this really upset me. I felt like she was downplaying the significance of what Mike did to me. I felt betrayed all over again. Jess knew how much I suffered during our breakup, and now it seemed like she was acting like it was no big deal. I couldn't understand how she could invite someone who hurt me so deeply into such an important event in her life. I tried to explain this to her, but she didn't really get it. She said I should move on and not let my past with Mike ruin her special day. I ended up getting more and more upset, and after a long conversation, I told her that I wasn't going to the wedding if Mike was going to be there. I told her that it wasn't just about her wedding, but it was about my mental health and healing. I felt like I was being asked to put myself in a situation where I'd be forced to face someone who never even apologized for what he did. Jess tried to tell me that she didn't want to take sides and that she didn't want to make her guests uncomfortable, but I was firm. At that point, I was really hurt, and honestly, I felt a bit blindsided. I was ready to just completely cut ties with her over this, but after a couple of days, I decided to compromise and offered a solution. I told her I would still go to the wedding if Mike wasn't invited, and that's when things really went off the rails. Jess responded with a text saying that she had already paid for Mike's invite, and that it wasn't fair for me to ask her to uninvite him at the last minute. I was livid, but I still held my ground and told her that I couldn't attend if he was going to be there. Long story short, Jess ended up uninviting me to her wedding. She said that she couldn't have me making a scene or creating drama at the wedding, and that it wasn't worth it to her to keep me there if I was going to be that upset. She said it was her special day and that she didn't want any negativity. I was completely shocked. I thought that a friend who understood me would put my feelings first, especially after everything I went through with Mike, but clearly I was wrong. Since then, our friendship has pretty much dissolved. She hasn't reached out to me to try and resolve things, and I've been left feeling like I did something wrong. A part of me feels like I should have just sucked it up and gone to the wedding, But then I keep thinking about how deeply Mike hurt me and how unfair it feels to be forced into a situation where I'm supposed to act like everything's fine. I've been getting messages from mutual friends telling me that I overreacted and should have just gone for Jess's sake, but I can't shake the feeling that I was right to stand my ground. AITA for ruining my friend's wedding over my ex being invited. AITA for cutting ties with my family after they refused to support me during my wedding. I, 28F, have always been very close to my family. At least I thought I was. I have two brothers, aged 30 and 25, and my parents are still together. My family is very traditional, and I've always gone along with their values and expectations for the most part. But this situation has really tested my limits, and now I'm wondering if I'm the asshole here. To give some background, my fiancé, 32M, and I have been together for almost 5 years. We met in college, and while things moved quickly, we knew we were right for each other. We both come from different cultural backgrounds. I'm Indian American, and he's Jewish, which has been a bit of a point of tension, but we've always been respectful of each other's traditions and family dynamics. Our wedding was planned for this fall, and we had already secured the venue, sent out invites, and started planning the guest list. Here's where things get tricky. My family is very strict about religion, and they had made it clear early on that they would expect me to marry a man from our community. While they were initially supportive of me dating outside of our culture, it became clear to me that they were only tolerating it because they thought it would fizzle out. It didn't, and as things got more serious, their disapproval grew. We had a few intense conversations about our wedding, and they insisted that I have a traditional Indian ceremony, and that my fiancé either convert to Hinduism or at least follow the customs of our faith for the event to be legitimate. My fiancé was willing to participate in the traditions, but he was not comfortable with converting. He didn't want to feel like he was dishonoring his own faith, which I completely understood. He wanted the wedding to be about both of us and our union, not about forcing one culture's beliefs onto the other. I explained all of this to my family, and I thought they'd be understanding. However, they were furious. My parents, particularly my mom, kept insisting that if my fiancé wasn't willing to convert, they would not support the wedding. They told me I was making a huge mistake and that this was my only chance to have a real wedding with their blessing. They even suggested that I should reconsider the relationship if he wasn't willing to change for me. This wasn't the first time they'd put pressure on me, but this time it felt like an ultimatum. As things escalated, my brothers got involved. My older brother, who's always been more conservative, told me that I was disrespecting our culture and would regret marrying someone who wasn't from our community. He implied that I would lose my family's respect and that my children wouldn't be fully accepted by our family if we went ahead with this wedding. My younger brother, on the other hand, told me I was being naive and that I should think about the consequences of my actions before going through with the marriage. It wasn't just the wedding anymore. It was about the entire relationship. They both told me that if I chose my fiancé over them, they would distance themselves from me. I was heartbroken. I've always tried to do right by my family, but now it felt like they were choosing to turn their back on me because I wasn't willing to compromise on something that was important to me, my relationship with my fiancé. The pressure and the emotional manipulation got to be too much. After weeks of stress, I finally told my family that if they couldn't respect my decision to marry the person I love, I wouldn't be inviting them to my wedding. I said that I was an adult now and capable of making my own choices, and I didn't want to start my marriage by allowing them to dictate it. My mom cried, my dad was silent, and my brothers were angry. But I stood firm. The fallout has been brutal. My parents have barely spoken to me since, and when they do, it's with coldness and passive-aggressive comments. My brothers haven't reached out at all. My mom even sent me a message telling me I was no longer welcome at family events. But the most painful part is that I've had to choose between my family and my fiancé. I know that I'm an adult and should be able to make my own decisions, but I can't help but feel torn. I grew up in this family, and they've been my whole world for years. The thought of losing them completely is devastating, but at the same time, I refuse to let anyone control my relationship. I feel like I've lost a part of myself, but I also don't want to feel like I'm constantly betraying my fiancé just to make my family happy. They've made it clear that they won't support me if I choose to go forward with the wedding without their blessing. It seems like this is an all-or-nothing situation. Now, we're a few weeks away from the wedding, and while I'm still in touch with a few extended family members, the tension with my immediate family has only gotten worse. Some of my relatives have tried to reach out and give me advice, but the general consensus seems to be that I'm being selfish for throwing away my family over a wedding. A few people have even said that I should humble myself and give my family a chance to come around, but I'm done waiting. I guess the question is, AITA for cutting ties with my family over my wedding? I feel like I'm doing the right thing by standing up for my relationship, but I can't help but feel guilty about not being able to find a compromise. I don't want to lose my family, but I also can't imagine not marrying the person I love. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me over my behavior. Okay, so this is a long one, but I'm hoping I can get some perspective because I feel like I'm in the right, but my family is making me feel like a terrible person. So a bit of background. I, 29M, have an older sister, Hannah, 32F, who's always been kind of perfectionist. She's had a pretty traditional idea of what a perfect life should look like, which includes getting married to a successful guy, having kids, and all that jazz. I've never been super into that lifestyle. I'm more of a live and let live kind of guy, doing my own thing, working a stable job, and focusing on my hobbies and friends. I don't have any problem with her choices, but sometimes it feels like she's been a bit judgmental about mine. About 2 years ago, Hannah met Ryan, 34M, and it was love at first sight. I'm happy for her, of course, but from the get-go, I had some reservations about Ryan. Not because he wasn't a good guy. He seemed okay, but because Hannah kept pushing this idea that he was perfect in every way. I didn't know him very well, and it was clear to me that she was idolizing him. He had this kind of alpha male personality that she was drawn to, and everything about their relationship was heavily curated to look flawless on social media. Again, nothing wrong with that if that's her thing, but it started to feel like everything about their lives was a performance. As time went on, I started to notice some things that I didn't like. Ryan had a tendency to make passive-aggressive comments, especially about me and my choices. He once mocked my job, which is in the arts, calling it a hobby instead of a real career. I didn't say anything in the moment because, honestly, I didn't want to cause drama, but it didn't sit well with me. I'd also caught him making some side comments about my lifestyle, implying that I was too carefree and I didn't take life seriously. So yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of the guy, but I didn't want to be the one to ruin my sister's happiness. Fast forward to a few months ago when they got engaged. Hannah asked me to be her best man. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could I refuse such an honor? Well, I considered it for a while, but I just didn't feel comfortable with the role. Not because I didn't love my sister, but because of everything I mentioned above, Ryan's attitude, the way they constantly pushed this perfect life narrative, and honestly, how I felt like I was walking on eggshells around both of them. I talked to Hannah and told her that while I was really happy for her, I didn't feel right being her best man. I explained my concerns about Ryan and how I just didn't feel like I could fully support the wedding the way she wanted me to. She didn't take it well. She accused me of being jealous of her relationship and said I was making everything about me. I tried to assure her that wasn't the case, but it seemed like nothing I said mattered. She told me that if I couldn't get behind her wedding 100%, then I shouldn't be involved at all. I told her that I didn't want to cause any more tension, so I decided to back off and just attend the wedding as a regular guest. Now, here's where things took a turn. About 2 weeks ago, Hannah called me and told me she had been talking to Ryan, and they both agreed that it would be best if I wasn't at the wedding at all. She said that my negative energy and lack of support had put a damper on their plans, and that they'd rather I not come if I couldn't be fully positive. I was honestly floored. I tried to reason with her, telling her that I wasn't trying to ruin her day, but I also couldn't pretend to be someone I wasn't. She wasn't having it. She said that if I couldn't get on board with everything, she didn't want me there. I was heartbroken. I've always been close with my sister, and I had been there for her through so much in our lives. So to be disinvited from such an important day was devastating. But at the same time, I felt like I had been backed into a corner. I wasn't willing to pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. I reached out to other family members, and some of them sided with me, saying that Hannah was being unreasonable and that it was wrong to exclude family over a difference of opinion. Others said I was being selfish and that I should have just sucked it up for the sake of family. My parents are caught in the middle, not really taking sides, but hoping that everything will blow over. Now, I'm torn. On one hand, I feel like I'm in the right for not pretending to support something I don't fully agree with. But on the other hand, I feel like I've lost my sister over something that could have been avoided if I just kept my mouth shut. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me over my behavior. AITA for telling my sister I wouldn't attend her wedding because she excluded my kids from the guest list. So a bit of context. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Ben, 36M, for 7 years. We have 2 children, Ellie, 6, and Noah, 4. My sister, Sarah, 30F, is getting married to her fiancé, Mark, 32M, and has been planning the wedding for about a year now. She's always been a bit particular, but I figure it would be like most weddings, lots of family and friends, a big celebration, the usual. We've always gotten along, though we're not as close as we used to be. Now, here's where it gets complicated. A few months ago, Sarah called me to talk about the wedding guest list. She said she was having a small ceremony and was limiting the number of guests. I totally understand wanting an intimate wedding, so I asked her if that meant just close family and friends. Sarah told me it was going to be a very select group and that she'd already made some tough decisions about who would make the cut. When I asked if that meant my kids wouldn't be invited, she hesitated. Then she said something that completely threw me off. She told me that because the wedding was going to be more sophisticated and formal, she didn't want kids there at all. I was pretty shocked. I mean, I get wanting a more adult atmosphere, but she knows how important my kids are to me, and we're a family unit. My kids are not an afterthought. Still, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I told her that I'd still love to come if the kids couldn't, but I was pretty hurt by the idea of not having them included in such an important event. After a long pause, Sarah told me that she didn't think it would be right for my kids to be there because they were too young to appreciate the seriousness of the occasion, and she didn't want any potential disruptions. I tried to explain that my kids are well-behaved and that we would take responsibility for making sure they didn't cause any issues, but she wouldn't budge. Now, this is where I may have overreacted. I told Sarah that if my kids weren't invited, then I wouldn't attend either. I said it didn't feel right to be a part of her big day without my family being included. Sarah got really upset and said that I was being unreasonable and making everything about me. She told me that it was her wedding, and if I couldn't respect her wishes, then maybe it wasn't worth me attending at all. After that phone call, I was really conflicted. I understand that it's her wedding and she's allowed to make the rules, but it felt like a slap in the face to me. I feel like I've supported her through everything, and I always include her in our family events, even if they're not her style. To me, family is about being inclusive, and this felt like a big exclusion of my kids. I spoke to Ben about it, and he agreed that it was a strange decision on Sarah's part. He's not super close with her, but he said it was odd that she was so firm on excluding the kids, especially considering the fact that they're her niece and nephew. We both agreed that if she couldn't see how important my kids are to me, it might be better for me to step back from the situation. I tried reaching out to Sarah a few times after our initial conversation, but she didn't respond. Eventually, I sent a message explaining that I wouldn't be able to attend the wedding if my kids weren't invited. I let her know that it wasn't meant as a punishment, but that it was important to me to be able to bring my whole family to such an event. Sarah's response was basically just her telling me I was being childish and selfish and that I needed to respect her decision. She said that if I couldn't respect her wedding vision, then it would be better for everyone if I didn't attend. I was devastated. I felt like I was being forced into choosing between my family and my sister. A couple of family members have reached out to me, telling me I'm being too sensitive. They said Sarah is entitled to have the wedding she wants, and it's not like she's excluding me, just my kids. Some even said that they understood why Sarah didn't want kids there, especially since they can be loud and disruptive. Others, though, have been supportive and said they can see why I'm upset. My mom hasn't said much, but I know she's caught in the middle. She's been telling me to just go, but I don't think she really understands how much this hurts. So I'm stuck. I feel like I'm being asked to choose between attending my sister's wedding and keeping my family intact. On one hand, I get that it's her day and she gets to decide who's there. But on the other hand, it feels like she's not willing to consider my perspective, and it's making me question whether I even want to be a part of her big day if she's not willing to include my kids. AITA for not wanting to go to my sister's wedding if my kids aren't invited? Or am I being too sensitive about the whole thing? I, 29F, have a sister, 26F, who's been my best friend for as long as I can remember. We grew up very close, shared everything, and went through a lot together. But in the last couple of years, things between us have started to change. The tension started when she got engaged to her now fiancé, 28M, about a year ago. From the beginning, I was very supportive. I helped her with her wedding planning, helped her pick out her dress, and even took on some of the more stressful tasks. She told me multiple times that I was going to be her maid of honor, and I was thrilled. I thought this would be a special experience for us as sisters. However, as the months went by, I started noticing little things that seemed off. First, she became increasingly critical of me. She would make passive-aggressive comments about my appearance, my life choices, and even my job. For example, when I mentioned a promotion I had at work, she said, "Well, I guess that's good for you, but I think your job sounds kind of boring." When I got a new haircut, she said, "Oh, I didn't think you'd ever try that kind of look." It wasn't just the comments. It was the way she started comparing herself to me all the time. If I talked about something I was proud of, she'd respond with something like, "I guess that's nice, but I'm doing XYZ, and it's way more impressive." It was subtle, but after a while, it started to hurt. Then came the engagement party. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, but when I arrived, I immediately noticed that she seemed cold and distant. Throughout the night, she barely spoke to me. The only time she did was to ask me to help with a couple of things, but other than that, I felt like I was an afterthought. At the end of the night, she pulled me aside and said, "Look, I've been thinking a lot about the wedding, and I've decided to uninvite you for being my maid of honor." I was shocked and confused. I asked her why, and she just said, "You've been really distant lately, and I just feel like we need some space." I tried to talk to her about it, but she just brushed me off. She said she wanted to be more focused on her relationship with her fiancé and didn't want any drama. I felt blindsided. After everything I had done for her, this was how she repaid me? I asked her if I could still attend the wedding, but she said, "I'm not sure if it's the best idea for you to come. I don't want there to be any tension." That hurt, but I respected her wishes and stayed out of it. Over the next couple of months, I did my best to let it go, but things kept getting worse. She started posting about her wedding plans all over social media, and every time I saw a picture of her with her bridesmaids, I felt like she was rubbing it in my face. I was left out of everything. She didn't ask me to help with anything, and she didn't even include me in any of the wedding events. Meanwhile, she was constantly tagging her friends and cousins, people who weren't even that close to her, in posts about the wedding. I didn't reach out to her at all after she uninvited me, mostly because I didn't know what to say. She made it clear that she didn't want me involved. I tried to stay respectful, but it felt like she was pushing me away without explanation. Things came to a head when, about a month before the wedding, she called me out of the blue. She said, "So, I've been thinking, and I know things have been weird, but I really want you to be my maid of honor after all. You've always been my best friend, and I want you there. Can you make it work?" I was floored. At this point, I had no idea what was going on in her mind. She had basically kicked me out of her life, and now she was asking me to step back in as if nothing had happened. I told her I needed some time to think about it. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive her for how she treated me, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to be her maid of honor anymore. But she kept calling and texting, asking me for an answer. After a lot of thought, I decided I needed to be honest with her. I told her that I couldn't be her maid of honor because she had hurt me too much. I explained that I felt like she had abandoned me, and I didn't want to be part of a wedding where I was treated like an afterthought. I also told her that I wasn't sure if I could attend the wedding at all. She got really upset and said I was being dramatic and that I should just get over it. She said, "I'm just trying to have a good wedding, and now you're making it all about you. You're being selfish." I told her I wasn't trying to make it about me, but that I felt like she had disrespected me. She hung up on me after that, and we haven't talked since. Her fiancé reached out to me a couple of days later to try and convince me to come, but I told him the same thing. I haven't heard from either of them since. Now, my parents are getting involved. They're both furious at me for refusing to attend the wedding and have been telling me that I need to put my pride aside and support my sister. They've also been telling me that I'm being unreasonable for not forgiving her right away. But I still feel like I was treated horribly, and I'm not sure if I could just act like nothing happened. I've tried to talk to friends about it, and most of them say that I'm in the right, but I also feel guilty for not just forgiving her and moving on. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to be a doormat. I am honestly torn. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after everything that happened? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me and my fiancé because of our unconventional relationship? So I, 28F, have a sister, Ella, 30F, who is getting married to her fiancé, Luke, 32M, in a few months. Ella and I have always been close, but like a lot of sisters, we've had our share of disagreements growing up. We're both pretty different in terms of our life choices, but we've always been able to get along and support each other when it counted. Now, here's where things get a little complicated. I've been with my fiancé, Liam, 30M, for almost 5 years. He and I are, for lack of a better term, polyamorous. Liam and I have a strong, committed relationship, but we also have other partners. I know this can be a controversial subject, and I get that not everyone is going to understand or agree with our lifestyle, but we're both happy and our relationships work for us. When Ella and Luke first got engaged, they asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, which I was more than happy to do. I've been a bridesmaid in a few weddings before, and I knew this was going to be a huge day for my sister, so I was excited to be involved. Things started to go downhill when I brought up Liam's other partners in a casual conversation one day. I wasn't trying to make it a big deal. I was just talking about my life and how we have other people we care about. But Ella kind of froze up and gave me this look like I had just committed some kind of crime. After that, she seemed really distant whenever we talked about wedding plans, and I thought it was just a phase or something. Maybe she was stressed out about the wedding. However, a few weeks later, she called me and asked to meet up. When we sat down, she told me that she needed to have a serious conversation about my relationship situation. I was a little taken aback because, again, I thought we were just talking about normal stuff, but I agreed to hear her out. She said, and I quote, "I love you, but I can't have you and Liam's lifestyle around at my wedding. I need you to respect that, especially because Luke and I come from more traditional families, and we don't want any drama on our special day." At first, I was completely confused. I told her that our relationship doesn't involve drama or anything negative. It's just how we live, and it doesn't affect anyone else. But she insisted that her guests wouldn't understand, and that my unconventional relationship might make people uncomfortable. I was kind of stunned because I've been to family gatherings, holidays, and events with Liam, and nobody has ever made an issue of it. But Ella kept saying that her wedding was about celebrating love in its purest form, and apparently, that didn't include the way Liam and I live. She told me that if Liam and I were planning to attend, we'd both have to leave our other partners at home and just come as a normal couple. I tried to explain to her that what she was asking didn't feel right. It wasn't about just going along with some conventional idea of love. It was about who I am and how I live my life. I can't just pretend that Liam and I are something we're not. She didn't get it. At this point, I started to feel like I was being asked to choose between my sister and my identity. I told her that I didn't think I could be part of the wedding under those conditions, and she said that if I couldn't compromise, then it would be better if I didn't come at all. She basically disinvited me. This was a huge blow, and I felt incredibly hurt. I understand that not everyone has to accept every lifestyle, but the way she handled it felt so dismissive of who I am as a person. I tried to tell her that I was still happy to support her, just not at the cost of pretending to be someone I'm not. Ella's response was essentially that if I couldn't support her in this one thing, then she didn't want me involved. I haven't spoken to her much since then. We've exchanged a few brief texts, but it's been really tense. my parents have gotten involved, and they've tried to convince me to let it go and just attend the wedding because it's important to Ella. They keep telling me that I'll regret it if I don't make up with her, but I don't think I'm asking for too much. I don't think I should have to sacrifice my relationship for her to feel comfortable. The thing is, I'm genuinely torn. I know weddings are important and all, but I've never been one to just blindly conform to someone else's standards if it's going to make me miserable. I've always been upfront with Ella about my relationship, and I don't think I should have to hide it just to make her wedding go smoothly. But at the same time, I'm afraid that if I don't go, it will cause irreparable damage to our relationship, and I'll lose my sister for good. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me and my relationship? Should I just suck it up and go? Or is it justified to stand my ground? Thanks in advance for your feedback. AITA for not allowing my sister to live with me after her marriage fell apart. So, this is a bit of a long story, but I really need some perspective on whether I'm being too harsh or if I'm in the right here. I'm a 29-year-old woman, married for 5 years to my husband, who we'll call Mark. We don't have kids, and we live in a house that we bought a couple of years ago, which we're really happy with. Now, my sister, who is 32, has been going through a pretty rough time. We've never really been close. She's always had a bit of a chaotic energy, and I've always been more responsible and reserved. I love her, but she's the type of person who always needs to be the center of attention, and I've had to pick up the pieces for her more times than I can count. About 6 months ago, my sister's marriage fell apart. To put it mildly, she's going through a lot. She found out her husband had been cheating on her for over a year. And while I feel sympathy for her, she's been handling it in a way that's made everything worse. She moved out of their house and was bouncing between friends' places for a while. Now, she wants to move in with me until she figures things out. Here's where the issue comes in. I don't think I can handle it. First, there's the fact that I know my sister. She's not exactly the most reliable or responsible person. She's a do-what-feels-good-in-the-moment type, and I've seen her go through phases where she makes terrible life choices and drags everyone around her down with her. I'm not saying she's a bad person, but I know what she's like when things aren't going her way. I already feel like my life is pretty stable and set in its rhythm with Mark. I like my space, I like having quiet evenings, and I like having a routine. The thought of her living with us fills me with dread. I can already picture the constant drama, whether it's a late-night phone call about her ex, her bursting into tears on the couch for hours, or just her general messiness taking over my home. It sounds harsh, but I don't know if I can handle that level of chaos right now. The second reason I'm hesitant is that I've tried to help her in other ways, and it's always a struggle. I've offered advice, I've listened, and I've tried to encourage her to get therapy, which she has refused. She's not in a space where she's looking to grow or move on. She just wants to vent about her situation constantly, and I feel like I'm always the emotional punching bag. I love her, but I'm not equipped to be her therapist or her emotional crutch 24/7. So, when she asked if she could live with us for a few months, I told her no. I explained that I love her, but I need to maintain my own mental health and that having her move and would disrupt the peace we've built here. She didn't take it well at all. She said I was being selfish and that it wasn't fair of me to turn my back on her when she was going through something so difficult. She also brought up how she helped me out when I was going through a rough patch in my early 20s, which is true. I was in a bad relationship at the time, and she did let me stay with her for a while. I get that she's hurting, and I truly want to support her, but I don't know if I can handle being her support system in such a direct way. I've suggested other alternatives, looking into therapy, finding a rental or shared housing, or even moving in with our parents, who live about 30 minutes away. But she refuses to consider those options. She says she doesn't want to be a burden on our parents and that they're not equipped to help her. I feel terrible about it, but I don't want to compromise my own mental health just to make her feel better. Mark is on my side, but he's also expressed that he feels a bit torn because he sees how much pain my sister is in. He said he would support whatever decision I made, but I can tell he feels uncomfortable about it too. Now, my sister hasn't spoken to me much since I said no. We've texted a bit, but the tone is icy. She's still trying to convince me to let her stay, saying things like, "You don't understand how hard this is for me," and "I thought family was supposed to help each other." I know she's in a tough spot, but I just don't feel like I have the energy or the emotional capacity to help her in the way she wants. I keep thinking back to the times she's burned bridges in the past, whether it's with me, our parents, or even her friends. She's had a history of putting herself first and being inconsiderate of others. And while I'm sympathetic, I also feel like I need to protect my own boundaries. Am I being unreasonable? I feel like I've tried to help her in ways that work for me, but she's not accepting those. I don't want to lose my relationship with her, but at the same time, I don't want to compromise my own mental well-being. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me during this difficult time. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she kicked her husband out. So here's the situation. I, 30F, have a sister, Clara, 28F, who has been married to her husband, Greg, 31M, for about 5 years. They've had a pretty rocky relationship since day one, but I've always tried to stay out of their business, even though I've never really liked Greg. He's always seemed a bit immature, self-centered, and not really the guy I imagined Clara would end up with. But hey, it's her life, not mine. Well, last week, Clara called me out of the blue, and her voice was shaky, so I immediately knew something was up. She told me that she and Greg had been fighting nonstop for the past few months, and things had gotten really bad. Apparently, Greg had been avoiding responsibility for their finances, was spending money on things like video games and expensive gadgets instead of helping with bills, and he'd been making some questionable decisions, like secretly borrowing money from friends without telling her. Clara told me that she had enough and had asked him to leave. She'd been thinking about it for a while, but finally reached her breaking point when he promised a change, and then immediately went out and bought a new gaming system with the money they were supposed to use for rent. She was furious, and understandably so. She told him to pack his things and go. But now she needed a place to stay because she didn't feel safe or comfortable staying in the house with all of his stuff still there. I honestly felt bad for her. I didn't like Greg, but I knew that Clara had tried so hard to make it work, and I could see that she was at her breaking point. So I told her that, of course, she could stay with me for as long as she needed. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, so there was plenty of space for her. She thanked me and said she would come over in a couple of days. I wasn't thrilled about the situation, but I didn't want to make her feel worse. However, things got complicated when Clara showed up with not just herself, but with all of her stuff, and with her dog. She has this giant, high-energy dog, a shepherd mix, who I'll admit I'm not a fan of. The dog is sweet, but it has serious boundary issues, and it's not trained very well. I have a small apartment, and there's just not enough space for her and her dog to be there comfortably, especially when the dog demands constant attention. I tried to be polite at first and told Clara that it was fine, but honestly, after the first night, I started getting really frustrated. Her dog was jumping on my furniture, knocking things over, barking at everything that moved, and I couldn't get any rest because it kept barking in the middle of the night. I talked to Clara about it the next morning and explained that while I wanted to help her, I wasn't sure how long I could deal with the dog's behavior. She apologized and said she would try to keep the dog under control, but it didn't get any better. The real issue came when Clara started acting like she was going to be there indefinitely. I get that she was going through a tough time, but she never even mentioned when she planned to leave or how long she intended to stay. It started to feel like she was taking advantage of my hospitality. I'm a fairly private person, and I like having my own space. Sharing my apartment with someone, especially without a clear plan, was starting to get on my nerves. I also work from home, and having Clara there all day, talking to me, asking me for things, dealing with the dog, was throwing off my entire routine. I sat Clara down after a few days and explained that while I wanted to help her, I couldn't have her and her dog stay indefinitely. I told her that I needed my space back and that I needed to know how long she planned to stay. She seemed shocked and upset, but she said she understood. Then, she told me that she didn't know where else to go and that her options were limited. Her friends were all in similar situations, and her parents lived far away and weren't in a position to help. I felt guilty, but at the same time, I was getting increasingly frustrated. She was acting like I was obligated to house her indefinitely just because she was having a tough time with her marriage. I told her that she could stay for a couple more weeks, but after that, she would need to find a new place. That didn't go over well. She told me that I was being harsh and unsupportive and that she felt like I was abandoning her in her time of need. That stung a little, but I stood my ground. Over the next few days, Clara seemed more and more upset with me. She would sulk around the apartment, barely talking to me, and it felt like she was waiting for me to change my mind. The tension was unbearable. Then, a few days ago, Clara called me again and said she had found a place to stay with a friend. She thanked me for letting her stay, but she said she wasn't sure if she could ever forgive me for making her feel like I didn't care about her. Now, I feel conflicted. On one hand, I try to be there for her, but on the other hand, I feel like she took advantage of my kindness. She never even asked me if I was okay with her staying indefinitely, and the dog situation really pushed me over the edge. I do feel for her, but at the same time, I don't think I'm obligated to put my life on hold for an indefinite amount of time just because she's going through a rough patch. So, AITA for not letting my sister move in with me indefinitely and for setting boundaries about how long she could stay. Am I wrong for not being more understanding about her situation? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me due to a conflict over my lifestyle choices. 28M. Have always had a close relationship with my sister Jessica, 30F. Growing up, we were inseparable. We shared everything, clothes, secrets, even a deep love for certain types of music and films. I thought we would always have each other's backs, no matter what. A few months ago, Jessica got engaged to her now fiancé, Tom, 33M. It's been a whirlwind romance, and they were planning a fairly traditional wedding, one where everything is supposed to be perfect. My family was thrilled, and as her older brother, I was eager to help her out with anything she needed. But that was before things took a turn. At the beginning of the wedding planning process, everything seemed fine. Jessica and I talked about details, what kind of wedding dress she wanted, how she'd envisioned her ceremony, and even the guest list. I was fully on board to be there for her, excited even. However, a few weeks in, things started to shift when Tom and I started to have some disagreements. The issues didn't really have much to do with Jessica at first. It was more about Tom. He and I didn't exactly hit it off. I mean, we were polite to each other, but it's hard to deny that there's a tension between us. I think part of it stems from the fact that I'm a bit of a non-traditionalist and have a more liberal view on things compared to Tom, who is pretty conservative. For example, I'm openly bisexual and have been in a long-term relationship with my partner, Charlie, 32M, for the past 4 years. Our relationship isn't exactly conventional by some standards. Charlie and I live in an open relationship, and while we don't flaunt it, we're very open about our dynamic to those who ask. Tom, on the other hand, is quite religious and holds more traditional values, especially when it comes to marriage. At first, Tom was polite, but noticeably distant when Charlie and I were around. We tried to keep things cordial, but it was clear he wasn't comfortable with the idea of our open relationship. I didn't take it personally. Everyone's entitled to their views, but I didn't expect it to escalate like it did. Things took a serious turn when Tom brought up his concerns to Jessica. He told her he didn't think it was appropriate for me to be part of her wedding because of my lifestyle choices. He was particularly upset about my openness about being bisexual and the nature of my relationship with Charlie. I wasn't present when this conversation happened, but Jessica later told me about it. She said Tom had some strong feelings about my personal life and thought it would make guests uncomfortable, especially the older members of our family. Now, I was upset, but I tried to be understanding. I knew Tom didn't agree with my choices, but I thought my sister would defend me. I've always been supportive of her, and I never push my views on her or anyone else. I just live my life and try to be a decent person. To my surprise, Jessica didn't immediately stand up for me. She said she was caught in the middle and needed time to think. I felt hurt, but I tried to give her space. We talked a few days later, and she told me that Tom had insisted that if I was invited, he would feel uncomfortable and that his family might also feel the same. She told me that if I wanted to attend the wedding, I'd have to either tone down my relationship with Charlie or not bring him at all. This was really hard to hear. I told her that I wouldn't compromise on my relationship with Charlie, and I certainly wasn't going to lie about my sexuality just to make Tom or anyone else comfortable. I told her that I loved her and would support her no matter what, but I wouldn't tolerate being made to feel like I was somehow less deserving of being at her wedding simply because of who I love and how I choose to live my life. Jessica's response was that I was being too dramatic and that I was making it all about me. She said that she didn't want to cause any more problems between me and Tom, and that it was just a wedding. Eventually, after more back and forth, she decided to disinvite me from the wedding altogether. She said that if I wasn't willing to compromise, she couldn't justify inviting me. She didn't want to cause a scene, and she felt like it would be too awkward for everyone involved. I was devastated. I couldn't believe my sister would let me go so easily, especially when I had been there for her through so many tough times. I know weddings can be stressful, and maybe she was just trying to avoid conflict, but it hurt me deeply that she would choose her fiancé's comfort over her brother's. We haven't spoken much since then. Now, I've been getting messages from family members telling me that I'm being unreasonable and that I should just get over it for the sake of family peace. Some say that my sister is just trying to avoid drama, and others say I'm causing unnecessary tension by being so defiant about my choices. A few have even suggested that I'm being selfish by making her wedding about me. I still feel hurt, and I'm struggling to see things from her side. I'm not angry at her, but I'm confused. She's my sister, and I thought we'd always have each other's backs. Instead, it feels like she's chosen Tom over me, and that really stings. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because of my relationship and sexuality? Should I have just accepted the compromise and kept the peace? Or am I right to stand my ground?